On August 9, 378 CE, the thunder of Valens' newly reformed cavalry shattered the Gothic lines, and the Roman Empire avoided its first catastrophic defeat. The battle had been set on the plains outside Adrianople, where a desperate eastern army faced an emboldened Gothic confederation that had fled across the Danube after years of mistreatment. In reality, the Romans were routed, the emperor slain, and the empire's western flank began to crumble. In this alternate timeline exploration, we examine what could have happened and why the real history unfolded differently. Valens' cavalry, now equipped with a heavier thrusting lance and disciplined in combined arms drills, broke through the Gothic shield wall. The Goths fled in disarray, their leader Fritigern captured, and a peace treaty was forced upon them that secured a permanent Roman garrison on the Danube frontier. But what no one knew at the time, what would not surface for decades, was that this decisive victory set the stage for an entirely different trajectory of imperial policy, technology, and culture. With the Goths subdued, the Senate authorized a sweeping program to cement the Danubian border. Permanent garrison towns rose on both sides of the river. Sirmium, Naissus, and a new fortified settlement at Marcianopolis became hubs for Roman administration and trade. The Magister Militum oversaw the integration of Gothic troops into auxiliary legions, granting them land in exchange for service. These measures transformed former enemies into allies, turning a volatile frontier into a productive zone of mixed agriculture and industry. The Christian clergy, now firmly embedded within the imperial bureaucracy after the Council of Constantinople, 381 CE, advocated for humane treatment of the Goths, arguing that peace was a divine mandate. The open loop here, while the Danube held firm, a new threat would soon emerge from the east, testing the empire's diplomatic resolve in ways no one could foresee. When Theodosius I died in 395 CE, his sons Arcadius and Honorius inherited an empire that, unlike our timeline, still functioned as a cohesive whole. The peace treaty with the Goths meant that the Western legions retained sufficient strength to assist their eastern counterparts. In 410 CE, Alaric's Visigoths, now settled in Aquitaine after their earlier settlement in 418 CE, launched a limited raid on Rome, but the coordinated response of both halves of the empire repelled them within weeks. The Imperial Senate convened an emergency council, and for the first time since Diocletian's reforms, East and West issued joint edicts to fund a unified navy and shared intelligence network. The result was a rapid reconstruction of the city walls and a renewed confidence in Roman authority across the Mediterranean. An unanswered question lingers: how would this unity influence the empire's capacity for innovation? The answer lies in the workshops that soon sprouted under imperial patronage. The stability of the frontier and the renewed fiscal health of the state allowed the Magister Militum to redirect surplus funds towards state-sponsored technocratic guilds. In Alexandria, Antioch, and newly founded centers at Trier and Londinium, workshops began producing water-powered mills on a scale never seen before. Early blast furnaces, modeled after Chinese ironworking techniques transmitted through Silk Road merchants, emerged in the mines of Noricum. These advances slashed production times for weapons, agricultural tools, and building materials. Grain yields rose dramatically in Gaul and the Balkans, feeding burgeoning urban populations. The Roman navy, now equipped with stronger hulls forged in these furnaces, could dominate the North Sea and protect trade routes to Scandinavia. Yet technology alone would not guarantee peace. A looming diplomatic crisis with a nomadic power threatened to undo decades of progress. By 440 CE, the Hunnic Khanate under Attila had consolidated control over the Danube basin, pressing against Roman borders. Rather than meeting him on an open field, a disaster that in our history led to massive loss, Roman envoys, guided by the seasoned diplomat Flavius Aetius, invited Attila to a summit at Constantinople. The terms were unprecedented. Rome agreed to a tribute of gold and grain, while recognizing Hunnic authority over certain riverine territories, provided the Huns pledged non-aggression. In exchange, Roman engineers offered the Huns access to watermill technology to improve their own food supply. The treaty held, and Attila died in 453 CE without ever breaching it. The open loop here is clear, with external threats contained, what internal transformations would follow? The answer unfolds in the reshaping of land tenure across the empire. Because the empire retained a centralized legal framework, land ownership never fragmented into the feudal fiefdoms that characterized medieval Europe. Imperial law continued to define property rights, and local officials, formerly military commanders, were appointed as bureaucratic magistrates rather than hereditary lords. In Gaul, the former Visigothic settlement in Aquitaine evolved into a network of municipia, overseen by imperial procurators who collected taxes directly for the central treasury. In Britannia, Roman-styled villas expanded into agrarian cooperatives managed by appointed curators, ensuring that surplus production fed both local markets and the empire's grain stores. This continuity prevented the power vacuum that in our timeline gave rise to warlords and castles. Yet a cultural shift was already brewing beneath the surface. With economic stability and a unified administration, the state turned its attention to education and the arts. Imperial academies, modeled after those of Alexandria and Athens, were established in major provincial capitals, Lugdunum, Mediolanum, and even in the newly Romanized city of York. Scholars translated Greek philosophical works into Latin, while Christian theologians such as Augustine, whose Confessions, c. 397 CE, now circulated widely under state patronage, engaged in dialogues that blended classical thought with emerging theological ideas. The result was a flowering of literature, architecture, and scientific inquiry that spread through the empire's extensive road network. Mosaic workshops produced intricate depictions of both pagan deities and Christian saints, reflecting a society comfortable with its dual heritage. These intellectual currents would soon feed into an unprecedented military capability, a navy that could project power far beyond the Mediterranean. By the early 6th century, the Roman Empire fielded a navy unrivaled in Europe. Constructed in state shipyards along the Adriatic and the North Sea coast, these vessels combined advanced hull designs from Noricum's blast furnaces with rigging innovations inspired by distant traders. The fleet secured trade routes to Scandinavia, bringing amber, furs, and timber into imperial markets while exporting grain, wine, and manufactured goods. Control of the seas allowed Rome to enforce a Pax Romana across the continent, deterring incursions from remaining Germanic tribes and fostering a pan-European economy under Roman law. Cities like Cologne, Paris, and London grew into bustling ports, their skylines punctuated by triumphal arches that celebrated not conquest but cooperation. And yet, even this grand superpower faced an inevitable question: could such a vast, centralized system endure indefinitely? The answer lies beyond the horizon of our episode, inviting viewers to contemplate the fragile balance between empire and innovation. The divergence at Adrianople set in motion a chain of reforms that reshaped the Roman world. A decisive cavalry victory prevented the empire's first major defeat. Stable frontiers enabled integration of former foes. Unity between East and West preserved political cohesion. Technological investment fueled economic growth. Diplomatic acumen with the Huns averted catastrophe. Centralized land law bypassed feudal fragmentation. Cultural patronage sparked a renaissance, and naval supremacy turned Rome into a continental superpower. In this alternate timeline, Europe never fell into the dark ages that followed our history's collapse of the Western Roman Empire. Instead, it marched forward under a single banner, its cities illuminated by aqueducts, its fields powered by watermills, and its minds enriched by classical learning. The real past unfolded differently because each decision, military, political, or cultural, carried consequences that rippled through centuries. By examining this what-if scenario, we glimpse not only how fragile the empire's fall truly was, but also how the forces of innovation and cooperation might have reshaped an entire continent.